Hey, I'm very aware we have a massive panel and so much to get through today, so I'm going to jump straight in. Thank you all for coming to our webinar, Exploring the Future of Sustainable Farms and Landscapes. I'm Tani Burgess, the Carbon Farming Outreach Program Coordinator, and this is our final webinar for 2026. So I can see a few familiar names, so thank you so much for coming along on this journey to explore carbon and what it means for Victorian farms. Uh, Working together with Agriculture Victoria and the 10 catchment management authorities, the Carbon Farming Outreach Program has also been running events all across the state. And I think it's now well over 100 events to well over 2,000 participants. So we're really excited to be exploring the future of sustainable farms and what that can mean for our landscapes and our biodiversity today, as well as other events that have explored understanding your emissions and the benefits of carbon farming. I want to start today by respectfully acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land on which Landcare Victoria occurs. We're inspired by the legacy of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as this land's first custodians. Today, I'm on Wurundjeri country in Monbulk, which means place of hiding. As a little bit of housekeeping, we really encourage questions, and we're going to have so much to get through today. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. Please put them to the presenters at any time using the Q&A function. You can also upvote and comment on each other's questions. So if there is one you really like, please feel free to interact with it. We've also got my colleague Anthony here in the back end to help as well. So thank you so much for joining us today, Anthony. Firstly, I'd like to pass to Dr. Michael Vardon. Michael is an associate professor at the Australian National University. He is a world-leading researcher and practitioner of natural capital and ecosystem services accounting, specialising in applying it to decision-making in the public and private sectors. His knowledge spans the collection of basic data accounting, compilation analysis, indicators, and key policy areas such as biodiversity conservation and water management. He's developed and implemented accounting in more than 30 countries. Michael, thank you so much for giving up some of your evening to come speak to us tonight.
Thank you very much, Tani. Okay, so let's start sharing. Share. Okay, and hopefully you have a presentation on screen. Can you confirm that?
We do.
Look,
Yep, looks
yes,
great.
yep. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge too, I'm on Ngunnawal country here in Canberra. And thank you to Tani and to Landcare Victoria for the opportunity to do this and for the very kind introduction there, which was good. I have got just a bit more. I always call myself the accidental accountant because I didn't figure out how I would get here. So it's funny where life takes you, but I've always made a career out of counting things. And it started with crocodiles and bats in the Northern Territory, and it sort of wound up counting dollars and cents in spreadsheets. But anyway, I've done a lot of ecology, but then a lot of statistics and accounting since I moved to the ABS, or when I moved to the ABS back in 2000. But all I just want to do here is I have a background in ecology and statistics, and the accounting sort of came afterwards. As Tony says, there's a lot to get through. We've got three different presentations. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about natural capital accounting. It is a bit of a mystery to most people. A little bit about market-based instruments, which is what our carbon credits and biodiversity offsets and biodiversity certificates are. What perhaps you should consider in general sense when if you're considering participation in a market, and then some final thoughts. Now, the key thing for this, I'm going to tell you about what I know based on my experience. If you're thinking about participating or not, please get further advice. It is a complicated, it is an area and it is a big decision. So just be careful. Don't base use what I have cautiously. So now we are trying to address problems. I'm not going to spend time on that, but they are interconnected, and we do have, there's mostly the goal of maintaining our well-being and sustaining that into the future. And market-based instruments have a place in that. That has already been decided by our governments and governments around the world. And we'll get into that. They do have a place. We're just going to see how much of the potential we can turn into reality. Now, I said we're going to do a little bit about natural capital accounting. What is it? Some people, apologies, I've done a few presentations for Victorian government and to different NRM groups around Victoria. But firstly, it's natural capital accounting is accounting. Okay, so accounting is about transactions. It's about transactions between people generally. So I had a transaction with a coffee shop this morning. I gave them $4.80 and they gave me a flat white. Okay, that was a transaction with two parties. I parted with $4.80. My bank balance went down by $4.80. Their bank balance went up by $4.80. They lost a whole lot. They lost the coffee, the milk. They used the machine and the electricity in order to create that. So there were two things involved. One was the physical coffee. The other one was the money which exchanged hands. Now, that's what the traditional accounting has been, just between economic entities. Okay, me as an economic entity, the coffee shop as one. In this, we're making the environment one of the things that we're now transacting with, so that we get things from the environment. So in some cases, that's pretty obvious. If we dig stuff out of the ground, coal, iron ore, that comes into the economy. Same with timber, fish, water. That all comes in, gets turned into products which spin round and round within the economy here. Hopefully you can see my pointer. But this is what the traditional accounting accounts for once it's inside the economy. Okay, we're now extending that. We count everything in. We also count in these things called ecosystem services. I'd love to spend more time on that, but I won't. But they're things which aren't normally counted in, but which we depend on. People might know it as an air filtration service or a water filtration service, pollination services, cultural and recreational services, those sorts of things. There's not an explicit economic transaction, but those are things we do use which come from the environment. The accounting also counts everything which goes out, so including greenhouse gas emissions. If we throw things in the rubbish bin, they get taken to the dump, and things which get put out into the waterways. But in this, so that's the sort of chain of things we're looking at. But we measure things in stocks and flows. I've already mentioned bank balances, so that's a stock of money. The coffee shop also had a stock of coffee, which goes, and then there's a flow, which is the transaction, so the amount of money which went one way, and then the cup of coffee which went the other. We have it in physical and monetary terms, and we have benefits and beneficiaries. Now, the benefits and the beneficiary. So I was the beneficiary at the coffee shop because I got one coffee. Now holding up a glass of water, can demonstrate a lot of this, and there is a lot of chains of flows. I'm going to start by doing this. Okay, very good. Okay, so I had a stock of about 200 milliliters of water. Sorry, I'll get my measurement units right. I took a sip of about 20 milliliters of water, so my new stock was 180. So opening stock 200, closing stock 180, the flow 20 milliliters per second. Now I did that all in physical terms. I can do that in monetary terms. In the ACT, this water is worth about 0.02 cents a litre. I'm not going to try to do that, but we can convert all of that to money. It's a fraction of not very much because, anyway, water is so valuable, it's priced very cheaply, but that's a separate discussion we can have as well. So can represent that in physical and monetary terms. I got this out of the tap. It was supplied by a company called Icon Water. Icon Water built a big dam on the Cotter River. The Cotter River got its water from the environment. The water flowed through the trees, which then purified the water, went into the dam, and then they distributed it. So there was a whole thing. Rain falls, we can record that, flows over the land through the trees and the landscape, purifies the water, goes into the dam where it's captured, where it's then supplied by Icon Water to me. It also gets supplied to, I'm going to say, or Capital Brewing. That Capital Brewing then turn it into beer, and then the beer gets sold by somebody else. And then all of the beer and wastewater also winds up back in the system one way or the other. So there we have it. Now, the benefit for me is, well, I'm already talking too much and got a sore throat. Okay, so managed to soothe that. But if I don't get about 3 or 4 litres of this stuff a day, then I will die. And not dying is a pretty good benefit. But in all of this, there is somebody who benefits and there is a way that they benefit. So if you just remember that, it's about transactions, stocks and flows, physical and monetary, benefits and beneficiaries. The rest is detail, and you can look it up in these books. Okay, for those old enough to remember phone books, there are big things about this big, thousands and thousands of pages of accounting rules. Yeah, you can look them up. We have them in the public sector. We have them in the private sector. They are standardized. What's good is in the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, they explicitly mentioned the SEA, System of Environmental Economic Accounting, which is what I'm a particular expert in. So it's good that the public and private sector accounting schemes are converging. You always use accounts for decision making. That's why you do accounting. You're recording information so that you can use it. But accounts are one part of an information system. You, of course, need basic data to make your accounts. And then you need to do some analysis and modeling. So I've just put an information system here. This is the public policy cycle, but it applies to any sort of decision-making process where you identify a problem, you figure out a solution, you implement the solution, you monitor the solution, you then go back and review the whole thing. Do you still have the problem? And then you can start again. So this is an adaptive management cycle reliant on information. It works at any scale. You can do it for a paddock, you can do it for a farm, a catchment, bioregion, whatever it is you'd like, infinitely scalable. Businesses can do it, anybody can do it. So there you can do it for a particular area, you can do it for a particular administrative unit. We all do it each year when we fill in a tax return. So we all do that sort of accounting. Excuse me. Market-based instruments. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but they are part of a much broader way of thinking, the carbon credits, biodiversity credits, that they're a way to achieve an end. And for the governments, why did the governments establish these? They've got many, they've got a few levers they can pull. Taxes and subsidies, levies, extraction charges, tradable permits, payments for ecosystem services. I'm just going to have to cough and sneeze. Excuse me. Need to get some more benefits from that water. So in all of this, the idea is to protect the environment and correct market failures. So you're trying to send the signals to people. It's often called to internalize the externalities for the economists there. But we have then different things: polluter pays, beneficiary pays. But one of the things this is trying to do is, in the case of the government, it's to efficient delivery of conservation or carbon mitigation. So in that, it's here the public money can be put to private enterprise to maximize public benefits. So this is all about an efficiency. Can the private sector do it efficiently? And that's what we've hopefully seeing. And then can that then encourage the private sector to invest in this as a new sort of industry? And we are seeing that. So the government has seen that. There are many critiques of market-based instruments. I'm not going to run right through them, but the most fundamental one is it's just philosophical. It's wrong. It's wrong to commodify nature. So it's either right or wrong in that dichotomy. But then there's this other one, well, it doesn't actually work. It's failed administratively. And they're examples of that. There are also other, different bits and pieces. Here we just have it. This is the former minister, Tanya Plibersek, and this is David Pope's take on that. How is this all going to work? And the possum sitting up in the tree, saying, "How is this working out for you?" So it is interesting. It's still a bit contentious in some circles. Not going to dwell on that. It's just what it is. But it's not without its controversies. And here in Australia, there have been many criticisms, many by people here at the ANU, Andrew McIntosh at the School of Law, leading amongst them for the carbon credits. Also had Phil Gibbons here at the ANU on some of the biodiversity offsets in New South Wales. Megan Evans is another name. But there are many things we could talk about, but we're just going to quickly run through carbon credits. Whoa. And then we'll have a look at biodiversity offsets and the certificates. So here we've got a well-established system, a long-established system, and a brand new system. The other ones we can learn from are the water rights and entitlements type things. Be nice to do more on that, but we won't. But we can probably learn a fair bit of that. And in particular, how the government limits its own liabilities. And here, I'm going to keep returning to this. In all of these, we have assets and liabilities, and it's very important to understand what your obligations or liabilities are when you enter these markets. Very quick overview. I've heard that the extension work has been going on, but this is the most mature market in Australia. You can see here there's online dashboards. This is administered by the Clean Energy Regulator. There's billions traded. There's many, many issued. There's a price. There, it's about $35 when I checked yesterday. Okay. If you're going to enter this, you have to do assessments. I've just put in one method there of assessment, and for that, there are substantial upfront costs. I'd love to be able to tell you what the costs are, but it's very hard to get it. A lot of it's commercial in confidence. I've seen estimates where it costs $200 a hectare and estimates where it costs $500 a hectare to have your properties assessed. There's things of scale, but there is a cost involved. If you get carbon credits, you're required to maintain the carbon stocks. You have to monitor, you have to report. And if you lose the carbon stocks, that may trigger an obligation to restore a carbon stock or force the cancellation of the credit. Okay, so you're going to lose one thing or another. One way or another, you will have to pay. Okay. Biodiversity offsets, another long-running market. The previous one, was established under Commonwealth law. This is established under state law in New South Wales, administered by their department, Biodiversity Conservation Trust. They enter into agreements, biodiversity stewardship agreements, and you get offsets. And you get species and ecosystem credits for individual species and individual ecosystems, which is very important when we come to the next one, because there can be generic credits, which may or may not be what results in some cases. But here is the going price for a koala for $550. You're going to go out and bulldoze a block of land and it's got 10 koalas on it. That's be $5,500, please, to get the credit to offset that. Okay, so we've got that. But if you're destroying koala habitat, you can't replace it with bettong habitat or bettongs. So at this place, you have to replace like for like. Nature repair market. Well, this is brand new. We had the Nature Repair Act in 2023. We've had just last week some amendments to the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. And in the Nature Repair Act, it said the certificates couldn't be used for offsets, but the amendments to the EPBC Act say they can be used for offsets. Okay, so people are still unwinding that, but it seems that you will be able to use certificates for offsets, and you'll be able to use certificates for platypuses to offset certificates for koalas. Excuse me, I'm really sorry to cough on screen. Once again, it's administered by the Clean Energy Regulator. So, well, what can you do? You can plant trees, you can re-establish vegetation along waterways, and you can manage existing habitat. Now, you all require a biodiversity assessment instrument. I'll get into that at the moment. There is plenty of stuff online. Hadn't quite realised it till last week when I did a quick check on that, that there is, and there's even a costing component. You need to know a fair bit before you're opening it up, but there are tools online to help you. So this thing is so new that no certificates have been issued yet. Okay, a project has been registered, and here it is. This is in New South Wales. It's just inland. Port Macquarie is somewhere over here on this map. But it's for 438 hectares, 12th of June. It's co-registered. It's not just the biodiversity certificates, it's also for ACUS credits as well. Okay. Now, you have to do a proposal. Now, this is all online. There's no information on the cost, commercial in confidence, but that to me looks like a very, very expensive report. Perhaps not unexpected for the first of its kind, but certainly something which is a lot of effort has gone into doing that. So if you're going to go into this or consider going this, you have to weigh your own benefits and costs from this. So clearly, if you benefit, you're going to turn part of your property, convert it to some carbon credits or biodiversity certificates. You can get diversify your income from the property, supplements the income. You can generate income, or you can create a financial asset that can be sold or held for future gain. Here we need to be very clear what is income and what is an asset which is being sold. Quite different for how you treat those. Now you could use the money from the sale of certificates or credits. You can invest it to get other income, or you can just have it and spend it the way you like, other disposable income. But whatever, you can get more money, and you can perhaps get more money by doing something which is consistent with the way you want to manage your property. So consistent with your values. So the motivation may not be purely financial. Now the costs, what do you actually have to wear? Well, you have to do a proposal. Costs for that, as I said, I'd love to be able to tell you, but they're substantial. You then have to establish things. I'm sure Landcare can tell you how much it costs per hectare to stick in a bunch of trees. You then need to have ongoing management. You need to monitor for compliance. The other thing is you must give people access to your property for the purposes of compliance. You have liabilities if credits or certificates fail. You have some restrictions on land use, and you get some cases the obligations are tied to titles. Now, when that happens, if it's tied to titles, you might get an increase in the price of finance. The interest rate you pay may be higher. You might lose access to finance. Sorry, we're not going to loan you money because because of what you've done to the property. And you might get a decline in the property value because you've already sold the certificate which was associated with the property. So you're actually left with the liability. So all of this, everything, if it's an asset or income, there's implications for tax on all of this. Please seek independent professional advice. I'm an accountant, but I'm not a tax accountant. So go away and do that. But just make sure when you're doing this, it's what goes in, what goes out. And then if you're looking at it, you have to see, well, how much money per hectare am I going to get? If I'm going to convert, say, some cattle farming, what is it? I don't know, about $200 profit per hectare per year, perhaps. Sure, landowners in the room will have it pretty much in their head what it is. Well, so how much money are you going to want to get in order to compensate for that? Okay, so to be purely economic, you have to get more than that per hectare per year for the duration of the agreements which you enter into. You might be willing to accept less because it might be less work. So there might be less overheads, there might be less work. You don't have to get out there and feed the cows and worry about where the hay is going to come from in the drought. And you can do both. It's not an either or. And that's where you've got a diversified source of income. There are also other benefits from having the native vegetation on your land, which are already there for shelter belts and other things. So you can get multiple benefits for yourself as well. So all of this is what you need to think about. Who will buy? I mean, this is the $50,000 question. Now, the Commonwealth, under the new amended EPBC Act, is setting up a fund which people can pay money into, and then the government will buy biodiversity offsets or certificates to offset that. So the Commonwealth is likely to become a big buyer. If you're in New South Wales, same thing, the New South Wales Biodiversity Trust. Now, the private sector, and this can be specialist intermediaries or individual businesses. So there will be companies, well, there already are set up to buy and sell these things. They will do it for regulatory compliance, quite clearly the major driver of the ACCU market, and then there'll be voluntary actions. There might be philanthropic or non-government organisations also involved that want to do that. Now, what will they buy? I think that's so, well, clearly if you're just doing it for regulatory compliance, you'll buy the most for the least, cheapest on offer. Okay. What will conservation in the government buy? Buy where it's needed. Degraded ecosystems, endangered ecosystems, protect natural features, extend existing protected areas, connect them all up. So if you're in one of those spaces, that might indicate that you're a candidate for that. Now you can buy for social or economic benefits. So delivery of ecosystem services outside of your property, or you might want to support areas with few other economic opportunities, and that's certainly the case in North Australia. And the other one is you might want to protect charismatic species. So particularly if you're using it as publicity, for want of a better word. So that's the question. How much of this cash is going to arrive? I'm conscious of the time. There are risks. New biodiversity certificates, unknown. What's going to be? We don't know how much it's going to cost. We don't know what you're going to get. We don't really know what the buyer preferences are. The green bubble. Now, this is the thing, Matthew Arguala from Cambridge. Everything is just overblown and actually it'll just blow up and everything will become worthless. So bubbles when things get overpriced, overhyped. Political uncertainty, certainly with the ACCUs, what's going to happen if you have change of governments, change of policies, regulatory change, regulatory failure, and a loss of trust due to loss of people like Andrew McIntosh saying that the carbon credit system's broken and it must be fixed. Oh gosh, I really am very sorry. I'm near the end, so I see it's six, but market-based instruments theoretically useful. Practically, they've been difficult to work. Okay, not impossible, and certainly have worked in some cases, but they are difficult. Landowners can get new sources of revenue. There's much uncertainty about the size of the markets. Changes to the EPBC Act. No one's exactly sure what that means. They only happened last week. People are still working it through, but there's likely to be a big box of cash for them to spread around. Use the accounting to think this through. What it's coming in, what's going out, what is your balance sheet? How much money? What are your liabilities? What are your obligations? What's your incomes? What's your expenses? Think it through. Okay. People working on the land are very good at this. They've got a whole lot of information in their head. They just need now to think out to 25, 100 years, because that's what you're committing some of these properties to. So all of this, I'm telling you to suck eggs, figure everything out. There's lots of information. Seek advice. It is something that you can do. It is an opportunity, but please think about it very carefully. So with that, I'll hand back to you, Tani. I think I'm just about on time, maybe 2 minutes over.
I think you're actually 3 minutes under, Michael. Thank you so much. That was so much information. And I don't think I've ever been this interested in accounting, which is so fabulous. Also, don't worry, you're talking to quite a few people in Victoria, and we're officially the worst place on work in the world for hay fever this season. So I'm sure we've all had a few tickles in our throats lately.
Yeah. Okay. No, well, thank you. I'll stop
No
sharing.
worries. Great. I'm actually going to pass things over to Anthony Gallacher, my colleague and program manager of the New Futures program within Landcare. Anthony, I think you're just going to give us a bit of an overview of what different landscapes across Victoria have been doing.
Yeah, thanks, Tani, and yeah, thanks, Michael, for that introduction to some of the complexities that I think our next two presenters have started to consider, negotiate, discuss as part of their New Futures projects over the last 9 months. So a great little way to sort of set the scene of some of the machinations that have gone on for our two pilot landscapes that we're quite happy to feature tonight. So thanks, Joe and Debbie, for coming along. I'll just give a quick overview for those who haven't heard of the New Futures for Victorian Landcare project. It's been a 3-year pilot that's been running across Victoria. So we've had 4 pilot landscapes, as you can see on the map there. The 2 that were running this year were Kiewa-Wodonga Landcare up in the northeast and Heytesbury District Landcare in the southwest of the state. So these landscapes, they led the creation of a multi-stakeholder landscape action plans for their areas, coordinated by working group and their local landscape coordinators to bring together a bunch of stakeholders, landholders, pilot farmers who were contributing to some of the discussions and helping to sort out what they want to look towards a 20-year vision in their landscape. So the New Futures program was based off the Four Returns framework, which is an internationally recognized landscape action and restoration framework. And so we've sort of taken some of that framework and adapted it for what it can look like at the local level and make it sort of relevant to the community ethos of Landcare. And so that's what our landscapes have been piloting over the last couple of years. And so it was really great to have an amazing engagement from our round two pilots this year. Both engaged a bunch of stakeholders, had a whole lot of workshops to help put together the vision for their future. And as part of that, we're able to engage a whole bunch of stakeholders, so investors, government agencies, other not-for-profits, and they all came along on the journey to look at what could be done in those landscapes. Additionally, we had support from our project partners, including ANU Sustainable Farms and Regen Farmers Mutual, on exploring some of the different types of expertise that might be brought into those landscapes to help really negotiate what is a complex space and set up some frameworks to consider how do we look at new ways of funding land care moving forward, and what's the type of monitoring approach that we need to take to ensure that the actions that we're taking are having the on-ground environmental benefits that are really needed in those landscapes. And so the groups explored different investor pools with the help of Regen Farmers Mutual. So we've heard a bit about the environmental markets today and sort of their emerging and ever-changing nature. And I'll leave it to the others to say sort of where they got to in terms of that exploration. But we also looked at a number of other pools of capital, so where the supply chain might be looking to deliver particular outcomes in those landscapes. And that's really on a commodity level, so looking at beef and dairy and those types of approaches to different commodities, and is there an incentive that might come down the supply chain based on upcoming emissions reporting. Public good, which is a kind of usual or somewhat business as usual approach for Landcare around getting philanthropic and grants and that type of funding. But another key pool of capital we looked at was local economy, which was really around, okay, well, what are the social enterprises, new business opportunities, procurement, and other opportunities in the local area that could feed back into the Landcare system and help deliver on the long-term landscape action plan visions for these Landcare networks. So with that, we had a few partners involved in the program, including Regen Farmers Mutual, Landscape Finance Lab, ANU Sustainable Farms, and it wouldn't have been possible without our two major funders, the Ian Potter Foundation and the Natural Resources Conservation Trust. And now we get to hear a bit more about the actual in-depth process that the round two pilots undertook. And so I believe we have Debbie from Heytesbury next. Over to you, Debbie.
Over to you, Debbie. We can see your slides perfectly. A reminder, just to pop your questions in the chat if you have any, as our speakers are going through. There's going to be plenty to cover in these two landscapes, so I'd really encourage you to ask questions. But first, let me introduce Debbie Dalzier. She's the New Futures Landscape Coordinator for the Heytesbury District Landcare Network, joining the team in May 2025 after many years as a committed landcarer. Experience and qualifications in environmental science, media and communications, and dairy farming. Debbie worked as a journalist before returning to a beef and sheep family farm in southwest Victoria in 1996 to undertake a dairy conversion with her husband Sam. Over 2 decades before relinquishing the farm, they delivered a range of on-farm biodiversity initiatives, including native shelter belts, remnant vegetation protection, and wetland restoration. Debbie, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Tani, and everybody. Sorry, I'm going to be turning my head so I can look at my notes on the big monitor. I'm not that accustomed to sort of presenting, so forgive me for that. And I've skipped straight to the end just with thanks, but I'll just skip through this quickly because Anthony, you've just indicated our project partners in this. So thanks to everybody who was involved in helping us get to the launch of our landscape action plan yesterday. The document's in preprint format, so I can't share a link with anybody at this stage. And thanks to the funding bodies, the Natural Resources Conservation Trust and Ian Potter Foundation. Also to our very capable working group, predominantly made up of, local people, apart from Andrew Wardy from RFM and Anthony yourself. You guys did a lot of travelling to join us and help to deliver this. And yeah, thanks to the working group for being so approachable and capable in the co-design process. Now, you've mentioned my background, thanks, Tani. So clearly I come to the position as landscape coordinator with a diverse background, so I consider myself to know a little bit about a lot of things and not a lot about anything in particular. So the process was a fantastic opportunity to dive a lot deeper into this space and learn about the markets and the things that we've just heard about. My background in journalism, I was working largely in regional print and radio, and I spent quite a bit of time in the Wimmera area in Western Victoria with the Weekly Times. So I've got quite a good knowledge of the landscape across Western Victoria. Returned home, as you said, to convert a sheep and beef property to dairy. We were milking around 400 cows for quite some time. We relinquished dairying, and I pursued an environmental science degree and profession, and I've spent time working with the Glenelg Hopkins CMA and briefly with Westvic before taking on the landscape coordinator position. And the pictures there are of a couple of my favourite places. There's the remnant messmate bush on our old property, and Farm Dam that was created when we were farming. A little bit about the Heytesbury District Landcare Network and our team. We're obviously a not-for-profit community organisation. Today we support 5 landcare groups and 3 affiliated groups. Our work is predominantly around protecting and improving remnant vegetation, riparian areas and natural biolinks, establishing shelter belts. We use tube stock and direct seeding methods. We have a nursery operating with staff, a couple of staff members and volunteers who produce tube stock for local and regional public and private projects. We support ongoing learning around natural resource management, our environment, our species through a lot of community, school and farm events and projects. And more recently, we've done quite a bit in the sustainable farming space with learning opportunities and projects. That's included projects around energy efficiency and carbon capture, improving soil carbon. In the last few years, we were part of a climate resilient farm project that explored regenerative farming methods, multi-species crops and effective use of effluent that involved about 30 landholders across 6,000 hectares, and various other projects including Bittens on farms. We have an annual biofund program with a budget of around about $30,000, and that equips us to undertake about 15 hectares of revegetation each year through tube stock plantings and direct seed. We are in southwest Victoria, our area, and just a little bit about our landscape for people who don't know. It's a very diverse landscape. To the north, we have volcanic country, including volcanic craters and cones, and which meet the Western District Lake system around Camperdown. In geological terms, these features are very young. They've been formed within about the last 20,000 years, so they're the youngest of their type in Australia. To our south, our area is renowned for its rugged limestone coastline. It takes in part of the Shipwreck Coast and the Great Ocean Road. The area features, as you'd probably be aware, steep cliffs, rock stacks such as the 12 Apostles and arches that have been shaped by the sea and wind over millennia. We have the popular Port Campbell National Park, Bay of Islands Coastal Park, the Curtis River and Estuary. To the east, we spill into the Otway region and the Great Otway National Park, which includes the Gellibrand River. It flows to the sea at Princetown. and our area was once covered by the Heytesbury Forest, that vast area of sort of the Landcare network. This was cleared for agriculture through settlement schemes, particularly in the 1920s and 1960s. And due to this, the remnant vegetation that remains in our area includes a lot of rare, vulnerable and endangered vegetation classes. The Curtis River, as I mentioned, is the major waterway in our area. It begins near Camperdown at Lake Purrumbete, Volcanic Crater Lake, and enters the sea at Peterborough. It's the condition of the Curtis is very mixed, and in poor condition in the highest and lowest reaches. The problems that we face are largely due to excess nutrients and high phosphorus loads being carried into the system during high rainfall events. Unrestricted stock access is a problem for, a fair patch of the riparian zone. The Gellibrand system in the east is a little bit better, but the river faces similar pressures. The Gellibrand is also a very important water source for Wodonga. It supplies towns and cities further afield from us, including Warrnambool. The soil health in our area is the healthiest in the Corangamite region, so it's a highly productive area. Our species, the area is very diverse and unique, so it's home to a range of threatened plant and animal species. Many have obviously been impacted by the habitat loss that I've mentioned, and predation by feral species is an issue. The iconic platypus and its status tells a little bit of a story in our area. It's found in the Gellibrand system, but until really this week, when there was verification, we thought it was locally extinct in the Curtis River. So that's been some fantastic news for us, because there's been a verified sighting. There was photos and video footage to show that it is in the Curtis. Prior to that, to the best of my knowledge, the last verified sighting was in the 1980s. Another species, the southern brown bandicoot, was once common in the area. It's rarely seen these days. We have estuaries, wetlands and seagrass beds, many threatened bird species across those regions, and a lot of rare and threatened ecological vegetation classes. Yes, so as I said, we just had confirmation that the Curtis River is home to platypus. Of course, given that it hasn't been seen for so long, and there was some environmental DNA work done a while back that didn't give us any indication that it was there. We've obviously got a very small population, so a vulnerable population. The land use in our area, as I mentioned, we cover about 200,000 hectares. It's predominantly dairy grazing. The dairy region is, I believe, now the highest producing milk area in Australia, with the most recent statistics. We also have sheep and beef, and agroforestry is an important industry. It's just become a major landholder in the Corangamite Shire. Horticulture, tourism is also an important industry in our area. We have a boutique sort of food paddock to plate industry as part of that, as well as energy sector. Now, coming to the plan, the process that was involved, we commenced in May. We became involved because obviously there was the opportunity, and it sat very well for us. Heytesbury Landcare had developed a strategic map from covering 2024 to 2028, and participating in the New Futures project sat very well with that, and aligned with the things that we were outlining in our strategic map. The process was quite an intensive co-design process delivered through a series of workshops, online training sessions, working group meetings, and meetings, one-to-one meetings with other partners and stakeholders, and a field event. Our landscape impact advisor, Tom Walsh, supported our pilot 10 landholders who were selected at the outset of this to participate. That included 9 dairy farmers and 1 beef farmer. Tom supported them to help map their farm data using the Regen Farmers Mutual digital platform and to obtain an understanding of their carbon emissions. That took place in May and June. From memory, all of our landholders had already used carbon calculators previously to understand where they were at or map their data, particularly using the Dairy Australia tools. In June, our online training sessions and workshops kicked off. Through the process, we learned a lot about environmental markets. We also realised how much we don't know, and that's reinforced through listening to you, Michael, and seeing all the instruments and tools at play. We had a field trip at the Doolan family farm. Peter Doolan was our landholder advocate with the Pilot 10 group for the Doolan family. Soil improvement and reducing inputs is a key focus for the family. There's 3 generations live on that property. The Doolans were early adopters of energy efficiency initiatives, and we've worked with them in that space and other ways in the past. They've managed to reduce their dairy emissions by 41% through their interventions. They've also significantly reduced their reliance on synthetic fertilisers, which is a key focus for them, including nitrogen, by using compost, biological foliar sprays and effluent for the nutrient cycling on farm. They've been moving to multi-species fodder crops with an interest in improving soil structure, boosting biological activity and improving their water use efficiency and infiltration. Peter's indicated to me when he thinks how he'd like to be 20 years ahead. He wants to see the farm as a climate resilient business with minimal external inputs, good water retention, and livestock grazing their pastures year round, and the reduced need obviously for fodder conservation as part of that. As part of the process, we identified our priority land management units for the landscape. We looked at the interventions that can have or are being undertaken, what type of actions and practice changes can landholders apply and still remain profitable, because obviously that's critical to this project, sort of aligning the biodiversity and environmental outcomes that we're looking for with farm profitability. Our area undergrazing in the Heytesbury Landcare region is a bit over 80%, and I think we have about 10% of native vegetation remaining. As part of the process, we were introduced to the concept of stacking and looking at applying multiple interventions either on a single property or across several connected properties to improve outcomes and investment opportunities. And the investor session that we undertook in September gave us the opportunity to test the market, see what appetite there might be from the different pools of capital to support some of these interventions and the goals that we're looking to achieve. Also, as part of the process, we considered all our assets, strengths, the key drivers in our area and threats. These are summarised in the Landscape Action Plan, and some of the threats that we identified are obviously climate change, a defining challenge for all of us. We considered how they're impacting our landscapes, our economies and communities. Economic uncertainty and rising costs, that was an area of concern for our Pilot 10 and participants. Obviously, that is something that significantly limits their ability to invest in interventions around improving vegetation, soil and biodiversity. And we discovered that there's few incentives through our supply chains for them and through the environmental markets, which I'll talk a little bit more about. Biodiversity loss and fragmented habitats, I've spoken about that. So that's an important goal to improve that, obviously, and a threat to our landscape, and the sort of impacts that has on ecological function and water quality, among other things. Water quality and flows, obviously our system's highly modified, and riparian zones have been degraded with land clearing, so that has consequences for water quality, flows and resilience. Excess nutrients and sedimentation are a particular concern in our area. The Curtis River in recent years has experienced a series of blue-green algal blooms and significant fish kills. So that's a threat, and certainly part of the actions as we look to try and address that. Partnerships and community participation were listed in our threats, because although we know we have really good networks and a great volunteer culture, we recognise that building and supporting these relationships is critical if we're to achieve what we want to achieve through the Landscape Action Plan. We have identified the fact that we need to continually communicate, raise awareness, provide learning opportunities, and support our volunteers. And building a good connection, identifying our shared values and working with our traditional owners is a critical part of this. I'm presenting to you from the traditional lands of the Kiewa-Wodonga people of the Maar Nation, and we've identified that we want to build our relationship and our working relationship with the traditional owners. Now, through the plan, we and our learnings around markets, our pools of capital, and our session with the investors, we discovered a few things. The markets are still immature in many ways, and the sort of environmental market, the carbon markets, don't really suit our landscape and our intensive farming systems. We also know that our premiums from the supply chain and incentives are not a key factor for us. The incentives that are there are very small, it's inconsistent, and the message to our landholders has been to, undertake actions as part of a business as usual approach. Don't really expect any great incentives in that area. But an area that is important is data collection, and the supply chain and various other areas are looking to collect a lot of data at the moment. So there's a strong push for that credible data for potential carbon, biodiversity and soil markets, as well as supply chain and other businesses. Our banks and processes also want to see measurable progress and benefits that can come through access to finance is one of the issues that we looked at and is available, obviously. Now, some of the priority actions that we've outlined are listed here. There's 5 priority actions in our Landscape Action Plan, and they're particularly around riparian restoration, biolinks and protecting our remnant and connecting our remnant habitats, enhancing farm dams, working with our lots of partners and stakeholders around adaptive management, sustainable agriculture, and our other key area of focus is around ongoing learning and partnerships. And I'm just going to share just a little bit more about a couple of these. Riparian, and I guess we come to those areas as our key areas for action because they are practical interventions. We know they work. It's a matter of scale and working with our landholders to try and find some of these incentives and potential investors. So for riparian renewal, I've listed some of the actions there, the sorts of things that you would expect, communicating with our landholders, identifying priority areas, collecting seed and propagating, which we do through our landscape nursery, fencing riparian areas and excluding stock. The important thing, I think, is, again, scale. And we've established some targets and costings in our landscape action plan. We thought that they were somewhat aspirational, but certainly achievable. And I mentioned before that with our current biofund project, we have $30,000 a year to undertake 15 hectares of free veg. So the landscape action plan has obviously considerably bigger targets than that we think are doable. Riparian renewal. Sorry, I think that actually should be the enhance farm dams. I might have the wrong slide there, but riparian renewal was another area we were looking at. And I was rushing to get my presentation done, everybody, so I apologise. I think the last couple of slides have gone awry. So I'll finish there and I'll be happy to take questions later.
Thank you so much, Debbie. That's really, really wonderful. And again, how can you fit a whole year of work across a whole landscape into one, 20-minute presentation? So thank you so much for giving us an idea of, the value of ecosystems in your area and all the fabulous work you've been doing. Just in terms of moving on to another fabulous landscape that's been doing a lot of work with the New Futures process, I just want to pass to Joe. Joe Vincent is, sorry, my computer is just having a moment. Is that coming through to everyone? Fabulous. Joe is the facilitator for the Wodonga Urban Landcare Network and the New Futures Landcare Coordinator for the Kiewa-Wodonga District. Growing up in Canberra as the bush capital, as well as her family's love of nature, really fostered an interest in the environment. Jo then went on to get her Bachelor's of Science in Resource and Environmental Management, which was followed by a career in New South Wales National Park and Wildlife Service, working as an environmental planner, a ranger, a team leader, and a manager. Jo commenced with the Wodonga Urban Landcare Network in January 2022 and loves supporting volunteers in the community on land management and environmental issues, as well as working at home with her family on their northeast Victorian farm. Jo, thank you so much again for joining us today. I'll pass over to you.
Thanks, Tani. I'll just get my screen sharing going. Hopefully you can see this. Is that coming through? Beautiful. Beautiful. So I'm the facilitator at Wodonga Landcare Network, and we worked very closely with Kiewa Catchment Landcare Network on the Kiewa-Wodonga New Futures project. Look, it's always good when you can move forward. Let's just see where we're going here. Sorry, folks. A little bit about our landscape. So the Kiewa-Wodonga region is quite small. We're around 220,000 hectares, and we run from the alpine area in the south of this image right through to Wodonga in the north, which is approximately 45 8,000 people at this point in time and growing rapidly. We're looking at, in the next 10 years, another 20,000 people in the Wodonga area. The Kiewa River is really the link which binds our landscape, and the river starts in that alpine area in the south and meets the Murray River at Kalara, which is an urban development actually within Wodonga. We had a team of fabulous landholders in our New Futures program. We had a mix of beef, cattle, horticulture, sheep and dairy farms. And we also had a real mix of large commercial enterprises and small farms, as well as a couple of lifestyle properties. And that was really important to us because that is really representative of our landscape. I do want to mention a little bit about our working group. We also had a fabulous working group, but we had two people in particular that brought, I guess, a slightly different perspective through our planning process. One was Marianne Scully, who was our landscape facilitator. She's a consultant, but she also works for an organisation called ACRE, which is the Australian Centre for Rural Entrepreneurship. And this organisation actually works with rural and regional communities to build positive, vibrant futures. They work through encouraging creativity, entrepreneurship, innovation, and they advocate for this emerging model of social enterprise as a means of really rejuvenating communities. And what I mean by social enterprise, it is a business. It's got a core of social, environmental or cultural mission, or it could be all of those elements. And they use commercial strategies to achieve public benefit. The other person who brought some really new thinking to our working group was Stuart Crosthwaite. Stuart is a dairy farmer, a large dairy farmer in our landscape. And Stuart actually started his own dairy cooperative after the Murray-Goulburn co-op collapsed in 2018. That was pretty big news and pretty devastating for a lot of dairy farmers in our region. Stuart started his dairy co-op with just 5 farmers, and he now has over 16 farmers in his co-op, and they're going strong. So again, Stuart's passionate about the cooperative model. It's about business, it's owned by the members, and again, they use their services to provide mutual economic, social and cultural benefits, but they're grounded in their local community in which they operate. So a bit more just about the ag perspective. So as I said, we've got that mix of urban and agriculture, and it is primarily supported by the dairy and beef industries. We have multinationals like Saputo operating in our landscape, and we also have a lot of boutique agricultural enterprises emerging, particularly in the peri-urban areas of Wodonga. As you can see from this map, we also have a large area of land in our catchment, which is public land, and that's highlighted in green. It includes the Alpine National Park and the ski resort of Mount Beauty Falls Creek. So these areas have got really high conservation significance, but they also attract a huge number of local, national and international tourists as well. So the first thing we did was, what was our goal? What did we want to achieve from our New Futures program? And it became really clear very quickly that our goal was actually to create an integrated landscape action and investment plan that united both our rural and urban communities in protecting and enhancing the Kiewa Valley and its unique natural assets, agricultural and economic viability, and its cultural heritage. So our journey so far, it's been big, I have to say. There's been an awful lot of information, and we really appreciate the support that we've had from both Landcare Victoria, Regen Farmers Mutual and ANU Sustainable Farms. We spent a fair bit of time understanding our landscape. Our farmers did farm assessments, and probably the bulk of our farmers actually didn't know their number. So that was a real revelation to a lot of our smaller farmers. And the analysis was really interesting given the broad mix of farms that we had from commercial through to lifestyle. And we also looked at ways that they could potentially reduce their emission footprints. We have a lot of fantastic natural assets. Most of our landholders and our working group are deeply invested in Landcare, and so we didn't spend a lot of time actually talking about our natural assets. But we have over 50 threatened species and also a handful of threatened ecological vegetation communities as well in our landscape. After we sort of looked at what we had, we built knowledge about our pools of capital, and then we really rapidly moved on to identifying what were our landscape action opportunities for Kiewa-Wodonga. It was really clear, a bit like Heytesbury, that carbon and environmental markets were not really an option for us. Some of that was due to the size of the properties, and some of it was due to the type of farming enterprises that we had. It was a fantastic learning curve, but we put that to one side and then started to actually focus on what other opportunities did we have within our landscape. Before we actually launched into that, though, we had quite a few people that were probably wavering, and we use the term, getting on and off the bus. And there are a few people who were thinking about getting off the bus at that point, thinking, what's in this for me? How is this going to work? And what opportunities are there? So we actually went through and were really clear about what were our 4 core pillars that were going to underpin our landscape action plan. And those 4 pillars were, it must support agricultural productivity. It had to protect and restore our landscape. It had to generate revenue for landholders and for Landcare. And it had to create community connection and bring together town and country. So with those 4 pillars in mind, moving on to this next slide, I'm hoping. Sorry, folks, we've got a slight technical glitch here. There we go. What's emerged for our landscape in Kiewa-Wodonga? Well, we have 4 opportunities. Our first opportunity is around reducing waste and boosting soil health with biochar. So our vision with this opportunity is actually a commercially viable and profitable biochar facility. We came up with a couple of models. The first one is a collaboration with North East Water to explore the production and supply of biochar. So North East Water came on board really early and spoke to us at length about biochar, attending a field day, which is a virtual field day, and also our investor session. And they are well advanced in the biochar space. They have a unit operating. They've done a lot of testing. They're using it to actually deal with their waste from their sewage treatment facility. And they have actually invited the community into that process to discuss how potentially we could get involved. So that is one option for us. The other option is that we build our own and operate our own biochar unit. It could be a collective of satellite units or potentially a mobile biochar unit. And we've affectionately called this Jim's Biochar. We've also thought about an accreditation system so that perhaps the biochar can be returned to our Landcare members at a reduced cost. What are the benefits? And Tani, I believe that you've just done a whole webinar on this, so apologies if people sat in on that and I'm repeating things. But in short, we see the benefits for our landscape as a way to reduce waste. It's a circular economy option by having a biochar unit locally. It provides access to the biochar resource, which in turn improves our soil health, our pasture, and that gives us improved milk yields and livestock weight gains for both our dairy and beef farmers. More broadly in the landscape, we've got woody weed removal and that waste being able to be used in the biochar facility. We also have a number of pine plantations in our landscape, so that waste can also be put into biochar. It's a resource to boost soil carbon. It reduces waste going into landfill. The pyrolysis process actually is one of the few processes which deals with microplastics, and there was a fair bit of talk about silage waste and how potentially that could be used in a biochar unit. It looks at effluent waste reduction on dairy farms, and it even complements pest and animal control. And yes, you can throw your dead rabbits and your dead deer into the biochar unit as well. So in terms of revenue, again, building on those models, we had reduced costs associated with dealing with waste in Model 1 and also productivity gains. And in Model 2, where Landcare would actually operate units itself, we had potentially a cooperative type model where revenue raised could actually be put back into the restoration of our landscape. The other thought that we had too was about intellectual property and what we developed in terms of a business proposal or plan for this biochar unit could actually then be sold, or we could support other people to set up similar systems in their landscapes. Our next opportunity was about establishing a beef collective. So this, our vision for 2045 was to establish a beef collective to integrate our beef and dairy industries locally, open up production options, manage bobby calves, and create new products and build viability. Again, we had a couple of models, and these models are not exclusive. They could actually be stacked and operated together. So bobby calves are a really tricky issue for dairy farmers. They are difficult to sell. Not many people want them. And our ideal is to actually create networks between the beef and dairy industry in our landscape to actually move bobby calves off dairy farms and onto beef farms. Again, the concept is building that circular economy locally and being able for beef farmers can actually grow out their bobby calves and sell them on. The tech exists in the dairy industry to ensure sex and breed and that we can market actually what beef farmers want. We've actually started some discussions already with an export company who are looking at dairy beef, and they are actually keen and will give a guaranteed price per kilo if we could actually progress this opportunity. So that's super exciting for our landscape. The other angle for this beef collective is about brand development. It's about communicating the value of Kiewa-Wodonga as clean, green, grass-fed, and ethical. It's about low carbon emissions, and it was really clear when we were looking at this that if small beef farmers actually got out of breeding and took their cows out of the system, the carbon footprint of those farms decreased dramatically. This whole model really taps into that beef and dairy producers' passion for the land as well. So the benefits of this one, obviously, for dairy, it's resolving a costly and complex issue, it's reducing waste, and it's building confidence that there is a market to take bobby calves. For our beef farmers, it's reducing emissions, it's lifting production, And it's reducing that uncertainty of markets when buying and selling steers if we can access those guaranteed export markets. For our landscape, we're reducing the waste from calf carcasses, and we're developing that local circular economy model. We've got a low carbon product, and that is a marketable commodity. For our community and our consumers, we've got access to a new local branded beef product, and we're dealing with that issue around animal ethics by connecting these two industries. From the revenue perspective, we feel like it's creating a new revenue stream, and the story can be used in the development of the brand. It's also reducing the cost and the stress of managing bobby calves for dairy farmers. The collective needs a project manager. We need a membership system, but we see that funds potentially could be distributed to landholders in the collective to do those environmental works that they want to achieve on farm. Our third opportunity, sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble with my slides going too quick, is farm dams. So our vision for 2045 is that we're going to have 80% of farm dams protected and thriving as biodiversity hotspots with crystal clear water. They're going to service healthy livestock. We're going to improve runoff and water retention in the landscape. We're going to have people flocking to the region, and there's going to be a thriving connected community and a bird twitching trail. So the benefits of this opportunity for us, it's about keeping water in the landscape. So we're retaining water for longer. We've got cleaner water for stock, and we've got improved stock health. For the landscape, it's about conservation and restoration. It's about habitat for native wildlife. It's about supporting plants and animals, and it's about improving water quality. We see revenue opportunities in extending tourism and visitor economies by developing a healthy dam, bird-friendly demonstration sites, and attracting twitchers, scientists, and hosting field days. And again, this one is creating connections in our community by hosting plantings, bird counts, and getting people from urban areas out into their rural areas of the Kiewa Valley. Our final opportunity is caring for the Kiewa, and our vision for this is around the Kiewa River being the jewel of our community. It's around all of the things which we need to do for riparian restoration, and there's some definite crossovers here with Heytesbury. Fencing and restoring riparian areas, utilising swamps and wetlands for water retention, leaky weirs, restoring native vegetation, re-snagging waterways, involving First Nations community, and ensuring our communities have access to and are enjoying the river. The benefits of this are very similar to the farm dams, and the two obviously are quite complementary. Again, we've got improved productivity and animal health. We've got integrated catchment management across all of our land management units. For the landscape, we're protecting a key asset, and we have a number of industries that really rely on the river, as well as agriculture. We've got AGL Hydro, Northeast Water, and the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, as well as our Albury-Wodonga residents. We see revenue as potentially environmental markets down the track. Farms will be able to reduce on-farm costs and increase productivity through improved water efficiency, and we may be able to generate revenue through tourism. For our community, we see that the benefits of this work are around tourism, fishing groups, traditional owners, and about connecting restoration efforts that farmers are undertaking with our stakeholders and our community. So what does the future look like? We have another investor session scheduled for February 2026, where we're inviting investors and our partners. we are working on an expression of interest for working group members. We are hoping that they're going to stay on the bus with us, and we're going to have champions for each of these opportunities, and they're going to continue to work with us. And finally, we think that our way forward is actually seeking funding for a project officer to actually continue to build out these opportunities, to further cost them, and to really work hard on seeking investment to make these things come to life. That's it. Thank you, Tani.
Yeah, thank you, Jo. I think both landscapes just had so many amazing examples that show that reducing your emissions or being sustainably or environmentally minded doesn't have to not be profitable. It's so exciting thinking about the application of biochar for, improving soil productivity while taking waste animals and, pest animals and waste weeds, and making something productive. I want to jump straight into our Q&A with a question for Michael. Have safeguard mechanisms credits depress the market for ACCUs? If ACCUs were around $100 rather than $35, they'd be a lot more attractive to farmers. Now, my understanding is that that $35 limit is actually a government cap at the moment. Would you be able to expand a little bit more on that, Michael?
No, thank you. I think that we're getting down to the nuts and bolts is how much would an ACCU or something just have to be worth to make it viable for either biodiversity credits or ACCUs. I think there's a whole lot of different pressures. I mean, there's not just one type of ACCU is the other thing. So there's lots of factors driving it in different ways. The government restrictions on the trading of some types of ACCUs is part of that. But I think it's, how free is the market becomes the question. And at the moment, the market is not completely free. So I can't exactly answer that question, but I can take that one on notice and just have a bit of a look. I certainly know some colleagues who will be all over that. So, yeah.
No worries. And I guess, Michael, I'm gonna slide in here and shamelessly ask my own question. Do you mind expanding a little bit more on how environmental offsets work? Because you kind of use the example of one koala not equaling a bettong. How does that work in reality when there's no like for habitat or species?
I think that's the 54. That's what everyone's waiting to find out, and what people really don't like about the new EPBC Act was this: you can have non-like for like. So that perhaps opens up opportunities for some people, but it will diminish them for others. And we really are going to get into a species and habitat exchange rate type question. So it's what does the nature positive actually mean? Does plus 10 koalas minus 8 platypuses equal plus 2 biodiversities? And no one really knows, but that's what the legislation currently looks like.
It's a very complicated question. I guess no one knows the value of nature better than Landcare, so I would say why not platypus plus koalas? Speaking of landscapes with platypuses, Debbie, has the CMA been able to support you over the years through this process and to get to the point where you've done, so much restoration? We've just got a question from Jackie Kelly.
Yes, yeah, the CMA and Heytesbury Landcare have worked together for a long time, and Corangamite CMA is we sit predominantly in the Corangamite CMA. We also in the west we move into the Glenelg Hopkins boundary, but there's been a lot of restoration work and projects with Corangamite over the years. I think for the Curtis River alone, there's about 394 kilometres of named waterways, with other little tributaries and things that's significantly more. And we were able to sort of ascertain that over the last 20 years, through CMA projects and Landcare projects, probably managed to protect about 100 kilometres of waterfront that we're aware of. But yeah, Corangamite CMA have been big supporters, and since we've had the problem with the Curtis River fish kills and blue-green algae, there's been a Curtis River Coordinating Committee formed, which was a multi-agency and community response to the problem. and we've been collectively trying to seek funding to be able to undertake significantly more work along the Curtis River and its estuaries.
Yeah, that's fabulous work, and 100 kilometers is an amazing number. I'm actually going to leave the questions and answers there and just very quickly go around the group and ask if you have any key takeaways or final pieces of advice very, very quickly. Debbie, did you want to start?
Key takeaways and advice. I think when we started, we probably were anticipating that there were going to be new opportunities in terms of markets. Obviously, we quickly learnt that those opportunities weren't there. Any sort of premiums for sustainable interventions for farmers, that ship had sailed. If you're an early adopter or branded in a certain way, there's that opportunity. The message to our farmers through the industries was, again, it's a business as usual approach, but our landholders can see the value in understanding collecting their data and understanding where they're at. And one of the messages that sort of come through was tell your story, or that will be assigned to you. So I think our landholders are motivated to understand where they are at in terms of their carbon emissions footprint. Obviously, in measuring, you can adapt your management, and they're really quite keen to undertake a lot of interventions, but needing the support, financial and the skills support to do that.
Absolutely. Jo, just over to you.
Yep. So I think really a key takeaway for me was more around the process, and particularly after hearing the stories from Heytesbury and from the 2 landscapes that were funded under New Futures last year. All the outcomes were quite different, but I think what was amazing was that the process demonstrated that when you have community-led plans at the landscape level, you can actually achieve some really amazing outcomes. So, yeah, that's my key takeaway, is that if you have an opportunity to get involved in this sort of landscape action planning process, definitely take it. It's very exciting to see where it can take your community.
Great. Anthony, very, very quickly, do you want to jump in?
I guess it's been a pleasure to work with all the New Futures landscapes, and I think my key takeaway is, even though things are moving very quickly, and as we barrel towards 2030 and there's going to be a whole lot more changes, fortune favors those that are ready. And so I think even just by having the understanding of your landscape, having a document and action plan ready to go, it's the way to be able to respond when we get hit with these new waves of things that are going to keep coming as we move forward. So get ready and keep an eye out for it, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. And last but very not least, Michael, any final words of advice?
I know. Thank you. It was great to learn and hear what's going. I think it reinforced to me several things, but it's lots of different things can give you value, and not all of them, some of it you could sell to other people, but some of it you can retain yourself. And no one thing will make something profitable, so it is good to spread things out. And the collective action thing came through quite strongly. So in all of that, I think it is working together, but realizing that no one thing. Yeah, be ready. So come back to Anthony. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. Be ready to take them when they come.
Absolutely. Fortune favors the prepared, as always. I just want to thank all of our panelists. I know we've gone a little bit over. Thank you all for staying with us as well. A reminder that we do really value your feedback. So if you're able to fill out the evaluation form that pops up after this webinar, it's really great for us to understand what you want to learn, because we do have a whole range of carbon farming outreach program events across the first 3 months of 2026. So we're really excited to have a couple more webinars and have a whole range of topics, including soil productivity, blue carbon, how to calculate your emissions. So if you do want to learn more about any of those things, please go to our website. If you don't see an event near you, please sign up for one. Again, thank you all so much for joining us today. I know in these times it can be really hard to be hopeful for the future, but I hope you all have gotten hope that we have such a vibrant, sustainable farming community here in Victoria. And I think the New Futures landscapes, especially, are such fabulous examples of what can happen when community and land care comes together. So thank you all. I hope you've had a wonderful night. Please also keep an eye or ear out because we will have another New Futures event looking a little bit more at the landscapes and learnings next year. But yeah, I will let you all go and enjoy the rest of your night. Have a wonderful Christmas and a happy New Year. Thanks.